So the third section, critical responses to world Englishes and the three circles model. In recent years, several criticisms of the three circles model have suggested that it is either flawed or outdated. So here Sridhar and Sridhar are talking about Kachru's three circles of the spread of English. So let me just show you a little bit of the circles. Right, Kachru three circle model. So here this image will do. So Kachru basically divided the English speaking people into three circles. The inner circle, where the supposed norm of English language, though people used that quote unquote standard language, standard English, and the outer circle are the people who spoke English as a second language. They learn English as a second language, and you can see India there, and Bangladesh, our country, is also listed there, but it's not actually agreed upon by most scholars whether Bangladesh is an EFL country or an ESL country. But here Kachru put Bangladesh in the outer circle for as a country where English is spoken as a second language. And there's also Zambia, Singapore, there are also others. These are just some examples. And the expanding circle, where people don't speak nationally with each other in English normally for normal purposes, but they do learn English. Not all of them have to, but it's not probably mandatory. It wasn't, at least until a few years ago. But they learn English as a foreign language to communicate for instrumental reasons. If they want to do some international jobs or work abroad. So typically what happens is that the inner circle, these people living in the UK, in the USA, they have better language proficiency, and the outer circle has a mid-tier language proficiency, and the expanding circle has the least proficiency out of these three circles. So as you can already tell yourself that this is a very simplistic model, right? So the Kachru just categorized, made three categories and said one is the expanding circle, one is the outer circle, one is the inner circle, right? So there's a lot of generalization going on here. So this is one of the reasons why it was considered flawed and outdated by many scholars. But let's see what Sridhar and Sridhar say. Since some of the papers in this issue refer to these criticisms, like in this issue means in this World English's Journal, the 2018 that volume, we would like to provide perspective and clarification. One set of criticisms claims that the World English's model has not kept pace with recent developments. It means that World English's was still outdated to some extent. So that was one of the criticisms of the Kachru's three circles model, because Kachru also represents World Englishes, right? Because he is a prominent name in World Englishes in this field, such as the sociolinguistics of globalization, superdiversity, and translanguaging. So these terms we already talked about in the introduction section, I think. So these will be expanded here. Another set of criticisms concern the validity and relevance of the three circles model, of whether it is actually valid or if it's relevant today. So another set of criticisms address that. In this section, we will comment on some developments in sociolinguistics and multilingualism, such as the sociolinguistics of globalization, superdiversity, translanguaging, and metrolingualism that have been represented as innovations which are transforming SLA and ELT, with which the World English's paradigm needs to catch up. So they will be addressing this concern. They will be commenting on that. I mean the writers of this paper, the Sridhar and Sridhar. It has also been claimed that superdiversity brought about by globalization following the fall of the Berlin World War and heavy migration into Europe has resulted in more complex, dynamic, and mobile processes of language interaction that cannot be explained in terms of the static categories of traditional sociolinguistics. So obviously we can also agree here that because of the because of globalization, because of the mainstreaming of the internet, we cannot say that Bangladeshi people are all speakers of second language, or they are not the norm, or that Indian here the UK and the US, they are not at the center, right? We already talked about this. So they are not the inner. When we say something is in the inner circle, so there's some connotation that they are the best, right? And that the outer circle is, it's a bit below, and the expanding circle, it's even more below, right? So there's this connotation. And then there's also intermixing between among the three, because you cannot say that there are some strict boundaries, right? There is no thin line among these three. Because of globalization, the whole world is a village. At the outset, we note that world Englishes as a paradigm has been open to innovations and has accommodated a plurality plurality of perspectives in theory and method. So we already talked about this, about how world Englishes has established the fact that we shouldn't consider English to be owned by anyone, but rather we should consider its center to be pluricentered. We also stipulate that the insights brought by these ideas are valuable and need to be incorporated in any adequate theory of SLA and world Englishes. So they also address the criticisms of Kachru's three circles, and they say, and they clarify some confusions, some matters of confusion, but they also do say that yes, these concerns, some of the concerns are valid, and we should actually consider them when we make any theories of SLA and world Englishes. That said, with respect to these specific criticisms, we feel that some reconsideration of the issues in order, both from a substantive and a historiographic point of view. So here the main point is this, that there are some specific criticisms which are not warranted for, which are rather not very critically said, those theories. So we can make this note here. There are some recent criticisms of Kachru's three circles theory, some of which are not critical and not valid. So these matters of confusion will be solved by Sridhar and Sridhar. So 3.1, the sociolinguistics of globalization and world Englishes. Some of the concepts that are claimed to be innovations were introduced not incidentally but quite centrally in the world Englishes paradigm as early as in the 1970s. So some of these concepts of, I think, the criticisms, they're talking about those. For example, consider the claim that the new sociolinguistics paradigm, Blomert and Rampton, 2011, disrupts long-held static concepts such as the native speaker, the norm, and so forth. Alright, sorry, I made a mistake here. So here it says that actually world Englishes, the innovations that were in place in world Englishes, those were actually what led to the changes in paradigm, to the paradigm shifts of other disciplines. We've already talked about them in the multilingual model, the hegemony, and in the other the non-native speaker should not be considered as a weaker speaker, right? So world Englishes was very much influential in having the other disciplines accept those views. But these claims are puzzling to anyone familiar with the rich body of work on the sociolinguistics of traditionally multilingual communities in Asia and Africa, and specifically the work in the world Englishes paradigm. 3 cases in point. They are giving 3 examples. The sacrosanct status accorded the native speaker. So they're highlighting the fact that traditional sociolinguistics used to think of the native speaker as the norm, right? As the sacred cow, as we discussed, as shown above, was challenged most eloquently and effectively by Braj Kachru as early as the 1960s, and subsequently by scholars including Yamuna Kachru, Larry Smith, Cecil Nelson, Peter Lowenberg, Kingsley Bolton, and ourselves, means Sridhar and Sridhar. So it started from Braj Kachru, who is a world English scholar, right? So world English was very that field was very influential in these new paradigms. So number 2 is the notion of a spatially bounded speech community. Okay, let's highlight these here. This is one paradigm shift. The second is the notion of a spatially bound speech community. So this was another paradigm that the traditional sociolinguistics and other linguistics, those fields had. The ethnocentric conception of an English-speaking speech community which excluded non-native users was debunked eloquently and effectively in a series of empirically grounded studies by Kachru, as early as the 1960s, demonstrating the need to acknowledge a deterritorialized, we already talked about that, globally diverse community of English language users. So again, Braj Kachru was pivotal to the paradigm shifts that happened regarding this spatially bound speech community. That speech communities are not bound like the non-native speakers, though they should also be studied. So Kachru was among the first to study them, like Indian and South Asian English speakers. The challenging of the sacred cows of sociolinguistics has been commonplace in the world English's paradigm for half a century. Alright, so this is also strictly related to the world English's field. So this is another point, that world Englishes has always been a step ahead by challenging the sacred cows or the traditional mindsets. In a series of now classic articles, Kachru challenged the distinction between second and foreign language ESL and EFL. So second is ESL, EFL is foreign language. The narrow characterizations of the target of second language acquisition knowledge, the limitations of the widely employed notions of correctness, error, interlanguage, and fossilization. That is now well documented history. The mystery is why this questioning of the sacred cows of sociolinguistics is portrayed as an innovation with no reference to exactly the same points made in the pioneering and extensive body of research in world Englishes. So what Sridhar and Sridhar are saying here is that the super diversity, these models, wait, let me pull them up. Sorry. So where are the new paradigms? So there were some paradigms, right? Like, yeah, I got it. So globalization, super diversity, and translanguaging, and metrolingualism. So the ideas that these terms, these key points are now so popular, the ideas that they offer were actually revolutionized, pioneered by Braj Kachru. So we cannot say that world Englishes does not touch upon these issues. In fact, world Englishes was actually the first field in linguistics that actually brought these issues into light. World English research has explored the consequences of globalization and diversity of speech communities every bit as radically as the recent paradigms, and therefore strengthens rather than challenges their central aims. So this is the important part of this section. The world Englishes. So it's not the case that world Englishes does not look into the into globalization, into those themes. Rather, world Englishes was among the first to actually bring these issues to light, and thus the popularization of these themes, they do not take away from world Englishes, rather they strengthen the view of world Englishes, the field of world Englishes. This neglect of this huge body of data including a great deal of previously unavailable data from traditionally multilingual communities of the developing world, and the theorizing based on the data is more puzzling, considered that they have published in the most respected academic outlets in the first world. Does this historiographic and substantive myopia means short-sightedness, signal the persistence of the paradigm gap we were referring to, only now extended to sociolinguistics? How is this to be bridged? So they are talking about how there can be a bridge built between the traditional sociolinguistics and now current misconceptions about world Englishes and sociolinguistics, and how a bridge can be built between sociolinguistics and world Englishes as well. And in the previous section in 2, So we talked about SLA and world Englishes, and now the focus has come to social linguistics and SLA. All right.